Live. And the
Oh,
camera's
at
right there. I'm
last.
going to move my browser right here because, folks, it is round three. Round three of Middle Earth March Madness, our annual voting extravaganza where you, the fans, get to choose which Lord of the Rings character, object, weapon, location, outfit, action scene, or even a tree moves forward in
Indeed.
the big March Madness bracket. I am joined by Mad Eye Gamgee himself, Jim Wirt. How's it going, Jim?
Doing well. Doing well. Watching the battles unfold this afternoon. There was one in particular that was pretty intriguing.
That's amazing, and we can't wait to see what the results are on the show. And if you're watching live, of course, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. I think those are the four ones right now. So we're live, and we want to see how you voted. So make sure you put in the chat how you voted as things come up. See that we're live on everything. And I think, I think we're good. So should we just jump into it?
We
That's
should.
our full
We should.
bracket.
But yeah, that was a full bracket. That's the eye test thing. You have to really squint close to your screen to get it. But this was our we called it the Sliverin 16. The four finalists in each of our brackets. That is the sparkly, jewel-like sparkly 16.
Sparkling Sliverin
Sliverin
16.
16. That's right. Down from the 64 we started from. These were a lot more interesting matchups this time around because, as you can see, for the most part, our crack team of seeding specialists did a pretty great job. We had 1 through 4s in all three, and then just a 5 in the final fourth region. So we seeded these matchups pretty well this time around.
Yeah,
And
this
we all bring some power.
feels good. This feels competitive. I got to say, it feels competitive.
It does, and we had a good turnout on the votes. It seemed to especially surge here in kind of mid to late afternoon here on the East Coast time. So there was a lot of interest that was kicked up by these matchups. Shall we dive into the elves, dwarves, monsters?
Yeah, our first, what do you call it? Not first bracket, first
Or the region or the bracket? Yeah,
region.
and
Yeah,
it was a region. I figured out. So the four regions really do break down into north, south, east, and west. And
they,
so
they,
the
you go.
dwarves and the elves are up there in Harland and in the northern parts of Middle Earth. And we had two elven dwarf matchups here in the final four for this region. Galadriel against Durin 4, and Durin's wife Diza against Elrond. So buddies all around, except for Galadriel, who's kind of off storming around and being angry at things.
Yeah,
So the first matchup here, um, the first elf on dwarf matchup, Galadriel versus Durin, played by Morfydd Clark and Owain Arthur. Um, any thoughts?
this one's tough because everyone has fallen in love with Durin,
Yes.
and he is just the fan favorite in the show. His performance by Owain Arthur has just been exceptional, and he's earning every fan one by one with every rewatch. Whereas Galadriel, Morfydd Clark is one of the best actresses out there right now, and she's signed a 10-year deal to play Galadriel. So this is her show. She is the star of the show, and besides Sauron, of course, season 1 was really about Galadriel.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go.
Yeah, I tossed out a prediction that Owain Arthur was going to go to the final four. In other words, he was going to win this match and win the next one.
Well, let's see if dwarves triumph over elves.
I was really Wrong. Galadriel's following. She got off to an early lead and never let go. It
Jim,
wasn't
look,
quite the margin.
elves always win. Don't the elves always win?
They're pretty durable and resilient. Yeah.
They're eternal. They're infinite. They don't die. They know not death. And so, did
So
people vote for canon reasons? Did people vote her forward because she is the one that survives?
possibly, because I saw some comments online that when you're looking at in this region, Galadriel and Elrond, well, you've got two characters that we see all the way through. Even in the Hobbit movies, they show up, let alone in the Jackson 20 years ago movies. So these are enduring characters, well loved, well known. Um, Obviously, there are people that did not like the way that Morfydd Clark portrayed Galadriel, although
But everybody that's complained admits it's the writing, it's not her.
but even in the writing, Galadriel was called a man maiden.
She was a man, yeah. Her performance in this show so far is true to how Tolkien described her. She was very much, a guy's gal.
Right. And there's clearly that developmental arc within the Legendarium, because Galadriel is one of the elven group that defies the Valar and decides to come back to Middle Earth, even though she could have stayed in Valar. Presumably that was driven in part because of a desire to form their own kingdoms, Galadriel included.
That's right. Let me bring this up on screen. Charles Harrington in the chat room says, "Can I just say, after so many months of online animosity, it's really great to see folks celebrating Rings of Power's Galadriel."
Yeah, and they have. The voters have clearly, we seeded her number one in this region, and it was a good number one seed.
All right, very good. All right, moving on.
So the next matchup is another dwarf elf matchup.
Dwarf and elf. I would go Dissa, Dis all the way, because the only female dwarf that J.R.R. Tolkien ever names in the Legendarium is Fili and Keely's mom, and her name is Dis, D-I-S. So it is interesting and pretty close to Tolkien canon to introduce the second named female dwarf and call her Disa. Nope. Did we lose connection?
I did for a little bit.
Oh yeah. I see it. So I think Jim's doing a quick little edit. So and I saw nobody talking about this, right? Like, the only female dwarf ever named by Tolkien is named Dice. I don't know. So what a great nod, respectful nod to canon for the show to introduce this new character and base it on the one character that Tolkien named. So kudos to the writing team for making that happen. Her existence and her naming and her characterization has been the most Tolkien in this TV show, I feel. So she's my girl. She's got to move forward.
Can you still see my screen or not?
I can.
You can? Okay.
Yes.
Well,
but it's not full screen.
Okay, let me put it on a full screen. I can do that. Okay, are we back?
Are we back? We're back, baby.
All right. So so I missed what you said a little bit about Disa, but she is a named character somewhere in the Legendarium, although obviously there isn't a narrative about that character.
Right. Well, I was just saying the only female dwarf ever named was Dis, Keely and Fili's mom. So it is this by creating this new character and naming her close to and the only existing female dwarf
Right.
is
Right.
a good nod to Tolkien. So, who'd you have for this one?
Well, I was going with Elrond. I was kind of hoping for an Elrond Durin matchup in the finals for this region, just for the bromance that those two developed during the show.
Oh yeah, but
Yeah.
so it is that's what. Well, that's not going to happen because Durin's out. So who does Galadriel get matched up
Is
against?
this going to be the matchup of strong women or the matchup of lifelong friends, or at least as long as Elrond's been alive?
And family matters.
That's right.
Spoiler.
So, and are you ready for the answer?
Let's do it.
It is an elf to elf matchup. Elrond moved on with
Look at
almost
that.
2/3 of the vote.
And shout out to Robert Arameo, who
Yeah.
was a recast in the
Yeah.
show.
That's right.
He was not signed. Will Poulter had signed a 10-year deal.
Yep.
And then when production got delayed and Marvel came knocking and said, hey, would you mind jumping into the Marvel universe? But it's a 10-year deal. So Amazon let Will Poulter go. And so second run, Robert Arameo has really stepped up into the role. And I'm really excited.
And generally, even some of the harsher critics have, I think, been more favorable towards how Elrond has been portrayed.
Yeah. All right. Next match.
So yeah, so those are the two matches here.
Oh, there you go. So
here's our finals for going forth from the north. Galadriel versus Elrond.
this is going to be tough. So I don't know what I'm going to vote for. This is going to be amazing. The word I was looking for earlier, conference. Each of the brackets is a conference.
Yeah, these are in the Northern Elven Conference. It's like Duke and Carolina going up against one another.
That's right.
So, but I'm not going to say either one of these is Duke because as a Carolina fan, sorry, that's like cursing to me. But anyway.
All right, next conference.
All right, so on to the next bracket, on the next region, Smash Mouth in the South. So our Southlanders and Mordorians semifinal. This was the really interesting region.
Yeah, I bet you the voting was pretty close. In each of these, so
it was. So, and this matchup in particular was. We even put out a post on the socials earlier today.
Yeah.
At one point this afternoon, this matchup was basically tied. There was like 7 votes that were separating it with Arondir ahead. Adar came back and took the lead for a while. And so this has been back and forth. And then there was a surge, an late afternoon East Coast time surge. So who do you think surged?
Well, this is the most interesting one to me because neither of these actors are returning for season 2.
Now, I have not heard that about Ismail.
Yeah, it's shocking indeed. But the Green Dragon gossip that's been going around town is neither one of these actors are returning. Joseph Mall has been replaced and recast, but
we know that's true. And he's been public.
Yeah, the character continues. And then we've been hearing Ismail has been here in Los Angeles for the last 6 months while they've been filming all over the UK and the Canary Islands. So I know he's here in town, not filming. So we've heard that he's taking season 2 off, and we will revisit his character in season 3 or 4.
So maybe he's going to come back in season 3 and 4.
The plan is for him to come back. He's not out of the show, but it's weird that he's such a fan favorite, and they spent so much effort developing his character, only to sideline him for an entire season.
Right.
Like it'll be 3 to 4 years before we see him again on screen in Middle Earth. I'm kind of shocked.
That I don't know. Maybe this result will change Amazon's mind, and he'll need to fly over to to London because
He did it.
this was a come from behind vote. I mean, Ismail Arandir really surged late afternoon here on the East Coast. He went from behind to more than 150 votes up, like 49, 50% to 58% of the vote.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Almost doubled his vote this afternoon.
It just goes to show, like, we love this character. He really feels, if there's any breakout star of Lord of the Rings this time around, it's him. On the first Peter Jackson movies, Orlando Bloom is the one that became a super duper mega star, $20 million movie, Pirates of the Caribbean, the whole deal. This guy is destined for greatness, and I'm glad to see him continue on.
Yeah, me too. And he for me was one of the most elvish, the most connected, connected to trees, connected to history.
His character feels the most Tolkien.
So he's moving on, at least in our matchup, and he'll be back in the next round coming up.
All right.
The second matchup in this region, Halbrand. I just put Halbrand on this one, although in our voting it was Halbrand.
Well, that's right. We had talked about that. Would the voting change?
Yeah. Well, we in the voting we couldn't really change how we've got our voting system set up, so it's still Halbrand / Sauron.
Maybe we should let the administrators know for the next round.
We can look at that.
We can put the request in because I think people voted for Halbrand / Sauron.
Halbrand / Sauron versus Bronwyn. A 2-3. In theory, this should have been even closer, but it really wasn't as much.
I don't like Halbrand, and I'm sad he's going forward because I'm a big fan of Nassim Bonian.
And on the string, I think because people flocked in to vote on the Adar and the
Arandir,
the Arandir Adar vote. Halbrand actually had the #1 raw vote.
And Jim, let's be honest. The show is called The Rings of Power, and you know who the Lord of the Rings is?
Yeah.
Do you know who controls all of the Rings of Power? Who makes all of the Rings of Power?
This guy.
This guy. Well,
except for the 3.
A version of this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's this guy. I don't know if it's this guy that makes the rings.
That's true, and there are rumors that there's going to be another or a different person cast.
Yeah.
For whoever it is that goes and helps the elves next, assuming that is part of the plot line, in making 9 rings for men and 7 rings for dwarves, because we haven't seen that yet.
Look, at the end of the day, the show's called The Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power.
Yep.
And everything about that title is only about Sauron. This should be Sauron's show.
So
we'll
see if it's Sauron's Middle-earth March Madness. But he is moving on to the next round, which sets up this interesting Southrons and Mordorians.
I think this is going to be a season 4 contest. I think these two characters are really going to have it out, and I wouldn't be surprised if Arondir turns into a leading Nazgul, maybe even the Witch King.
I don't know, because he's not a man.
Oh, that's right. None of the elves get corrupted.
We've already seen those elven rings.
Wait, do the elves get corrupted?
Well, that was what Adar was a corrupted elf, but not through a ring.
Was he corrupted, or did he make a choice to follow Morgoth?
There's an interesting moral question. It sure does sound through his dialogue in the first season that it was part of his choice.
And the word I'd love to know your opinion, Jim. When we say the leaders of men and dwarves were corrupted, does that imply against their will?
I don't think it's as simple as a for and against. I think that part of the corruption is a twisting of the will itself. And so there is an inclination towards self justification. I mean, think about the scene with the mouth of Sauron, where there is such pride oozing out. Who has the authority to treat with me?
Hmm.
Yet he's forgotten his own name. His lips are corrupted by the very words that he's speaking.
Wow.
You know, so that the Nazgul are emptied out. It's happening slowly to Gollum. Um, and you see a little flash of it in the Jackson movie with what would happen with Bilbo. And we didn't see a cut scene of what would happen with Frodo as that ring continues to hollow out. It's Frodo's choice at the cracks of doom when he says, "And the ring is overtaking him," and yet he's also simultaneously saying, "The ring is mine." So
Yeah.
who's at fault here? And so, yeah, that corrupting power of evil is not only working against, it's working in and through those human, in this case, human choices.
There's
Yeah,
something to this Tolkien guy. I
yeah,
tell you.
there is. Yeah, there is. So that's our matchups coming in for the finals in our southern region, our Southrons and Mordorians.
Yeah,
Harfoot
Meg in the chat room. Let me bring this up. It says corrupted or fooled, and I think that's the point I was trying to get across. Like, is corruption an involuntary choice or a voluntary choice to say, you know what, I'm going to follow this guy because I don't like how humanity has treated me, so I'm going to side with the other guy.
But it's interesting, you know, it is in some ways fooled, but also corrupted. When you think about the 7 rings and the 9 rings, um, they're of comparable power, but work very differently on humans versus dwarves. So a dwarf puts on a ring, a dwarf doesn't disappear.
Ooh, curious.
A dwarf is particularly affected by ultimately what becomes a dragon lust for the accumulation of, of things, of kingdoms and of wealth and of riches and of that kind of glory. But they don't disappear. Men desire power, and so it's the kings of men that are especially prone to say, "Here's something that will help you to get more powerful. You will rule." And so there is a kind of a corruptive temptation, a force at work from outside that is leveraging that weakness, but simultaneously is working toward a desire that each of those races has. And that's what's interesting about the Elven rings, because they literally try to protect and preserve them from Sauron ever seeing or touching. And they don't have that kind of power dimension as much as they have a protection or a foresight or a guidance kind of a dimension. So that's very much an elven aspect of the power that the rings bring to them.
As a longtime reader and book fan, would you be okay with this show changing the corrupted kings of men, the 9 corrupted kings of men, to 9 corrupted leaders of men, kings or queens?
Yeah, I think so. Because those leaders are coming, and we talked a little bit about this last time, that you see all different kinds of leaders and political maneuvering. We're going to get into this when we get to the Numenor bracket this time around.
Oh, that's right.
So even with Pharazôn, who starts not as a king, but as a political guy, but is maneuvering toward that. It's at a much grander scale, the same thing that the mayor of Lake Town does, in a much more humble setting. So,
all right, let's go to the next bracket.
All right, on to the Harfoots and visitors, the beasts in the east, as I've labeled them here. We've got at least one Brandyfoot left. So 2 Harfoots in the first matchup, Eleanor Brandyfoot versus our friend Sir Lenny Henry Sadok Burrows, which is our first matchup in this round. I know you're a fan of Sadok. You have him going all the way.
Yeah, he's my guy. I encouraged everybody to vote Sadok all the way through. Lenny Henry, I apologize on behalf of the production for killing your character. You're the one person I wanted to continue on this journey with.
And interestingly, Markella Cavanaugh was like what the first announced cast member back in the day when Amazon was announcing cast members.
So who'd you have for this?
I think I was leaning towards Sadak in our last conversation, but I'll tell you,
Well, the chat room is saying Nori here.
yeah, and the chat room is correct by a pretty large margin. With more than 3/4 of the vote, Nori comes through, number 4 in the raw vote totals.
I am shocked. I am genuinely shocked. Because I don't connect with that character at all. I'm not saying it's a bad character. I just don't connect with that character. Zero. I don't know. I kind of thought that because I'm not connecting, a lot of people are not connecting. This proves the opposite. A lot of people are connecting with.
Yeah, and they see the tookishness in this character. She has a close connection. She becomes the companion of a wizard, and so there's a lot of Baggins kind of backstory possibly with that.
We got a question from the chat, Jim.
Yeah.
Will Sadok the White return to restore the true purpose of the happening?
I think that's more of a question for Lenny Henry than it is for the right.
Well, he's not returning in this Middle Earth March Madness bracket. You're voted out. You're one and done. Thank you very much.
That's right. Write Amazon or something about Sadok the White. That's good. Second matchup was we called Poppy the Sam Gamgee of the contest, and Sam in past March Madnesses, I think he's won a couple of times in prior years. So there's a lot of folks who love that type of character, the person who's always the faithful friend, the backup, the solid.
I could understand that, but I did not like those characters at all, and they're horribly miscast because Tolkien describes the Harfoots specifically as browner of skin, and I think this character and the last one were completely miscast for Tolkien's description, and so that's my opinion.
So Poppy was going up against the season-long black box, the question mark. Who is this guy?
Amazon, please ditch the mystery boxes. It's not Gandalf. It's Gandalf. It's Gandalf. It's Gandalf.
There are some that are holding out for a blue wizard because he is heading east, and the blue wizard's headed east. But there should be two.
Yeah, I don't know if we got into it last time, but Jim, the blue wizards have such a great opportunity to be wonderful characters, but of all new characters that they could explore, the blue wizards are not old white men. Like, they gotta be someone else, like someone from Iran or India or a Chinese actor. Like, there's so much opportunity to have just an awesome high level actor play from those regions play a blue wizard, not this guy, but he's great as Gandalf.
Right, and it's a developing story. He was called an Istar by those witches by the end of the season, so it's clear that he is a wizard, and the most obvious candidate would still be Gandalf in his early wandering days. Gandalf in the Legendarium does not come into the Second Age, as far as we know. So, the
only one we know that Tolkien describes as coming early is Saruman, actually.
So
Saruman shows up early, and does some mischief when the forces need to be balanced. So could this be Saruman? I don't know.
Don't know. Probably, I would guess not. This is a complete aside, but next year we're going to see the War of the Rohirrim, the animated film, and there is pretty good speculation that Saruman could show up by the end of that one.
Ooh, ooh, I like this.
But that's a different. That's late third age.
Yeah.
Helm Hammerhand. So
Well,
we'll
I
hold on.
think this is a shoe-in for the stranger, but I could be wrong.
You are correct. Not quite as strong as Shuin, even as Nori was, but still with 69% of the vote, the stranger is pressing on
Look,
to the finals in this region.
if people, some lore aficionados are like Cliff and Matt at Nerd of the Rings really have never liked the idea of this guy being Gandalf.
Yeah.
But if they just call him Olorin, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Well, but for us aficionados, Aloran and Gandalf and Canus and so on are all the same guy. So
I don't. Well, see, when the movies came out, Cliff and a bunch of staff members of the One Ring explained that Gandalf the White is not the same as Gandalf the Gray.
that is
So
true.
why do you say Olorin is not the same as Gandalf the Gray? It's obvious that this guy goes through levels up.
Oh, he levels up. I think that his death and resurrection post Balrog was a little different than
Oh,
Joe.
okay.
So it goes.
Well,
So here's our matchup for the finals in our our eastern region. Eleanor Brandyfoot is going up against her new best bud, the Stranger.
Eleanor needs to just go away. I don't want her in the show anymore. And if she wins this bracket, I guess I have to do some soul searching on
Yeah.
my reviews of this show. But vote the stranger. Vote not Gandalf.
Vote not Gandalf. That brings us to our last region, the Numenorians, our best from the west, as it were.
By my beard.
We have Elendil going up against a tree, the white tree. Nimroth, the fair. The tree actually has a name. And Farazan, interestingly, going up against Muriel, the very person that, at least according to the legendarium, he supplants as the ruler of Numenor. We haven't seen that yet, but presumably we will. First matchup, Elrond against Nimloth. Lloyd Owen versus the seedling of Galathilia.
I just love Lloyd Owen's voice. And
Yep.
we have a video on our YouTube channel of him reading some prose.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Some poetry from Tolkien. And it will make you melt.
There you go.
But who goes forward here? The melting voice or the molting tree?
That's right. Well done. Well played, sir. Well, I think it's pretty obvious. Elendil, with 73% of the vote, still one of our top 3 raw vote recipients, is going to move on to the finals in the Numenorian bracket.
Fun fact, his introduction in this series in episode 3 or episode 2, at the end of episode 2 into episode 3, is inspired by Lawrence of Arabia. The shot, the silhouette on the raft,
Right.
is
Right.
a direct
Oh, I think I did read that. That's right.
to Lawrence of Arabia.
Looking out over the
Many
desert.
reasons why it doesn't work at all, and the showrunners pointing that out, like they can't believe nobody got that. And it's like,
Right.
well, the reason the Lawrence of Arabia uses his shadow is
Right.
is completely appropriate to the switch in the character from a stranger in a strange land into a leader of the resistance and rebellion.
Right.
Whereas Elendil shadow is nothing more than surface level film history. But I'm glad he's moving forward, because that white tree, come on, I can't believe the white tree was even here. Oh, it looks like we got a hang time on Jim's internet connection. He's obviously frozen. So while we wait for Jim to get back online, how are you guys
I'm back.
doing? There he is. He's back. How are you guys doing on the voting? Did you Are you guys batting a thousand so far on the votes? Did you vote for all the winners? Uh, Put it in the chat. I want to know. Um, hasn't the tree suffered enough? It's a good one, Charles.
Can you see the
Yeah.
top one here?
Oh, we're up to Farazan and versus Muriel.
Yeah, yeah. So this was our last matchup. As we said, it's a bit of irony because it's a literal matchup that happens in the Legendarium.
I don't know
Muriel is
anything
Tyranid.
about Farazan because I haven't read,
Yeah,
but he looks interesting. And I think I said on the show last time, he reminds me of the bad guy in The Secret of Nim.
yeah, yeah. So, you know, read the unfinished tales or read the appendices, and you will know that Farazan becomes our Farazan, the Golden,
Not
and
my Farazan.
he, AR Farazan, and he's the last king of Numenor.
Hey, what did you think? Well, okay, let's before we announce the winner, what did you think of the show's decision to blind Muriel?
Oh, I thought it was interesting. Um, I I think it adds depth and some interesting, places to go with that character. I don't know how they're going to handle it, and whether that weakness is going to be something that Farazan exploits, which would seem a little gratuitous for me if that's the way they go. Um, it's interesting because her father, who is Tar Palantir, Palantir, like the Palantir stones, means far seeing.
Huh?
And so the fact that they have blinded his daughter, um, there's subtext that's going on with that idea. So, but we've only seen that aspect of her character for a brief time. So we don't even know if it's a permanent blindness. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I imagine this was a close one, but I like them both. I like them both. I gotta say.
Yep. And they went with the more heroic, and by a pretty good margin. Muriel moved on with 69%.
I think because Farazan just had nothing to do in season one. Like they introduced him, but he doesn't
There's a lot
really.
of setup going on.
Yeah, there's a people say it was the season one was too complicated. There were too much things going on, and I think Farazan is one of those guys that could have just not been in season one at all, and were no less for wear. On
Yeah, Amazon was trying to tell a multifaceted story. If you think about, for example, the last two books, if you've read them, that George R. R. Martin wrote in the Game of Thrones saga, not the TV show, but the books, he basically, in one book, tells only about half the character's story, and then in the next book, the other half. And he got a lot of criticism for that. Um, I guess Amazon could have taken that track and try to streamline the stories, but then they would have had to have come back. Same thing that Jackson faced when Tolkien wrote the story of the three hunters and the battle at Helm's Deep and so on, and then he backtracks and tells Sam's and Frodo's story.
yeah,
Shelob's lair. So you have to make those kinds of choices. And do I mix them, or do I try to keep them clean and tell separate story arcs? So
well, what's this conference looking like now?
okay, so here is the matchup for the finals in Numenor: Elendil versus Miriel. So
This is
both
tough.
closet faithful to the elven traditions.
Are they both? I don't know much about the lore. Are they both end up on the same side? Like they're kind of buddies right now, but in the coming battle for Numenor's soul, do
Right.
do they stay on the same side?
Well, Miriel is going to be as I said, supplanted by Pharazôn. And I don't know because we don't have storylines in the Tolkien writings, so we don't really have a story arc officially from Tolkien about Muriel's character.
Interesting. Okay.
So we have more of a story arc for our Pharazôn, and for what, um, at least in the books, that Sauron is going to do in corrupting Pharazôn and building temples on Numenor and convincing them that they need to attack Valinor, which is how the great wave that we have seen ends up overwhelming and Numenor gets destroyed. It's the Atlantis myth, but written in Tolkien's world.
Yeah.
But Muriel is such an important character that clearly she will have things to do. It's hard to imagine that she's going to be ultimately on the ships that Elendil, I think it's 6 or 7 ships that Elendil and the remnant of the faithful will take to Middle Earth after Numenor is overwhelmed and sunken. So it's hard to see Muriel on that boat, but maybe she will be. Don't know.
It's hard to see. She's kind of like Muriel herself.
Indeed. But Elendil and his son, Isildur, are still alive.
Isildur's dead. Hey, no spoilers. No spoiler. We're taking the show at face value.
Okay. So here's our I call them our Ainur 8.
Ainur. Wait.
So that's
different than Ainur is different than Ainior.
Ainur 8. Yeah. So that's Sindarin for elder. It's the closest E word that I could come up with. I thought about our Arod 8. Arod was the name of a horse that Jackson used in
Elisar.
Yeah, but that's a name. I needed an adjective. Arod means noble, but I went with Elder 8 or Ainur 8.
Eldritch horror? No, wrong legendarium.
That's right. Wrong legendarium. So here are our matchups for the Elite 8 or Ainur 8. We've got Galadriel versus Elrond, Nori versus the Stranger, Arondir versus Halbrand Sauron, and Elendil versus Muriel.
A lot of friends versus friends here, and is this a precursor, a prelude to friendships being broken in the narrative of the show?
Could be. We'll see.
We'll see. Question from the chat. You should have a round of missing characters like Tom Bombadil, Círdan, Gorn. Well, maybe next season, if you've been following the OneRing.net, our Torn Tuesday show every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, we have been reporting that all of those characters you just mentioned may be turning up in season 2. Things are getting weird. Maybe even a talking Gwahir, the Great Eagle.
Wow. That would be fun.
So next year's Rings of Power matchup could be interesting.
Indeed. So here's the final brackets, and a circle around round 4 is coming up. And voting will start.
You can start voting tomorrow morning, I believe.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
in the quarterfinal
next season. So you can start voting tomorrow, and then you vote for the Elite 8 or Ainur 8.
Yep.
As we're calling it, for the next couple days, and I think we'll do this again. On Friday?
So the plan would be to do it again. This is Wednesday, so yeah, Friday we'll have our results and announce the Final Four.
The big Final Four of Middle Earth March Madness. But so it's up to you. We don't control the votes. We just point it out. But the question is, do we ask the administrators of the poll to remove Sauron's name from Halbrand? Or
I don't even know if that's possible now, as that the technology has been set up. But
interesting. So I think having Halbrand / Sauron skewed the results versus just voting for Halbrand as he was in the show. Do you agree with that, Jim, or do you think everybody?
No, I think that the folks that are voting already know that Halbrand and Sauron are connected. So just dropping that out of his name is not going to fool anybody. So that
Well,
would be my guess.
Well, this has been a great results show. I got to say, I can't complain about these matchups. They're really good. They're really close. They're really competitive. I would have liked to see Sadok, but you know, uh, we got one Hobbit, and I think the Wizard's going to trounce her. But that's up to you guys. So start. You'll be able to start voting tomorrow. Just go to the OneRing.net. We'll probably post the updated voting in the morning, and of course, we'll probably be tweeting and Facebooking it tomorrow morning when proposed. Thank you, Charles, and the professors, and Lexi, and everybody in the chat room. Kaylin, I saw you in there. Arna, thanks for joining us for this live results show. And thank you, Jim, for putting.
Oh yeah, I saw one question from Ann. Why wasn't Halbrand named Anatar? Because that would have been too obvious. I heard.
Uh,
If they'd named a character Anatar, everybody would have known
this
he was Sauron too early.
this is what. Well, we can discuss the merits of the show on a different show. We're here to celebrate March Madness Middle Earth style. So,
There we go.
all right,
Oh, come back.
we'll do this again on Friday, huh?
Keep voting tomorrow and Friday, and then we'll announce the final four.
All right, everybody, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you for the next results round on Friday. So start voting tomorrow and share with all your friends and family.
Indeed.
See ya.
See ya.